Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the worst college basketball teams of 2024. I'm going to do kind of a two-parter for this video. The first few minutes of the video are going to be looking at just the worst teams in general. And then the second part, we're just going to filter it for the Power 6 teams because it is interesting to see the Power 6 teams that are really bad. And this year, we've got one team, DePaul, who's just historically bad for a team in a Power 6 conference. But just in general, 362 teams. Who is number 362? It is Mississippi Valley State. That should be a surprise to absolutely no one. Out of the Southwest Athletic Conference, it's the worst league. But guys, I want you to notice something. If you take a look at their actual rating, it is .0273. So what that means is if you matched Mississippi Valley State up on a neutral court with the most average team in all of college basketball, they would have around a 2.5% chance to win. If you even compare them to Coppin State, who's right above them, they're about, like Coppin State has a 5% chance. So, they're significantly the worst team in college basketball. They are 1-29, 1-16 in their conference. You can take a look at their overall, little game score. Not great. They do have one outlier there. I think that was UConn, funny enough. In terms of their offense, they are 362 out of 362. Defense, they've shown improvement at 356. But yeah, there is not one positive stat there. I guess in close games, they're 1-3. So not the worst thing in the world. And then looking at their actual schedule, you take a look at the far right there. The total game score, 1-1. They had a 28 against UConn. They had their highest game score of the year came in a game they lost 87-53. Yikes. Oh, Pacific. Yeah, Pacific might have had the worst performance in history yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw that Pacific game against Pepperdine. Just crazy. But you can see, look at their game scores. 0-0, 4-7, 1-2, 1-1, 0-8, 1-6, 1-1, 2-7, 1-2. This is not out of 10. Okay, the game score is out of 100. So, and then they've got one final game against Jackson State. But moving on to another team, the second worst team of college basketball, it is Coppin State. Out of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, they're 1-13 in conference play. They are 2-26 overall, and they did have a relatively good game. Shout out to them early in the season, right after Thanksgiving, against UMBC. UMBC taking strays out of nowhere. Remember UMBC beating Virginia? How the mighty have fallen. No, but that did give them a game score of 76. Other than that, they did beat Maryland Eastern Shore, who's always horrible as well. They beat them in overtime, and they really haven't had a positive game score since. Another terrible team. This one's every year. IUPUI. I remember, I don't exactly know what happened, but this was like 2 years ago, probably in the 2022 season. Ohio State randomly scheduled this team like midway through the year, and this team is just horrible every year. IUPUI. They're 6-26 overall. They just fired their head coach. This was his tenure. Look at that. In terms of total T rank, 358, 360, 360. They were 3-26, 5-27, 6-26. I will be honest, the Horizon League is not terrible. The Horizon League is at least okay. And this is a team, they began 2-0. If you guys remember, there are a select few people that I'm sure remember, whenever college basketball starts, it always starts on a Monday, like the first Monday in November. And the first game of the day was like an 11 a.m. game, them against some Division II team. And they barely won that game. They won by 7. But you can see they beat another Division II team clearly in overtime. Looks like they beat another Division II team, Defiance. They did beat Detroit Mercer and also Fort Wayne. So that's a decent win against Fort Wayne. I'll give them credit for that. Speaking of Detroit Mercer, technically Detroit Mercer is better than you think they are. I know everyone was talking about them. They were like 0-26 at one point. But because they're in the Horizon, because they play some competitive games, In terms of out of 362, they finished 349. So in terms of analytics, they were like the 13th worst team. They did have a very good showing against Ole Miss. That should have proved to you that Ole Miss is a fraud. Remember Ole Miss when everyone was like, oh my God, they're 13-0. Yeah, that was a paper tiger start. Ole Miss barely beats, Detroit Mercer at home. And then you can see they did beat IUPUI, so it's like we're coming full circle. It's inception of bad teams. Yes, they almost beat Milwaukee in the Horizon League in the first round. A sad loss for them. Now we're going to go to the worst Power 6 teams, and the worst one, this is historic, it is DePaul. DePaul, in terms of Power 6 teams, is 310th overall. The next lowest team, Louisville, is 101 spots higher than them. DePaul right now is 3-27. They are 0-19 in Big East play, but it's different. Like with DePaul, it's so bad, they're just not competitive. Like basically every game they lose by 20 to 30 points. Their only wins came against South Dakota, which is actually a decent win for them. They did also beat Louisville by 7 points. And then Chicago State, Chicago State's not on this list. Chicago State must be improving. They are improving. Chicago State had one of the weirdest schedules. I was going to do a video on it, but I don't know if there's enough content to make it out to a full video. Chicago State, because they were technically an independent, they had like 2 games in February and no games in March. So they played all of their games, honestly, in the early months of the season. It was strange, but the same thing happened last year. But just looking at this, I mean, they were losing every game by 30 points. It's not even like, okay, they're in a good conference, they're losing some close games. No, they're getting crushed. They lost to Providence 100-62. Look at that run that they went on. If you look at the middle of the season, UConn, they lost by 40 points, 30 points. They almost beat Georgetown. They lost by 3. Creighton, 84-58. Villanova, 94-69. Providence. You lose to Providence at home, 100-62. There's a problem there. There really is. DePaul is just historically bad. Louisville, I feel like this is an improvement for Louisville. Going into this year, I think people thought Louisville was going to be the DePaul of this year, and they did finish 209th. I mean, they're a blue blood program right now that has really just completely fallen off. They need a new coach there. They did beat UNBC. You got to feel bad for UNBC. What a massive fall after that great win in 2018 against Virginia. They beat Florida State. They dropped a 100-burger on Florida State at home. Other than that, it's just not good. They lost to Notre Dame and had a game score of 4. They did have a game score of 92 against Pepperdine, their best performance of the year, and they've had some okay performances as well. The worst team in the SEC apparently is Vanderbilt. Now, I didn't even know this, but Missouri is actually winless right now in the SEC at 0-17. But Vanderbilt right now sitting at 8-22 in terms of their analytics. Vanderbilt has completely fallen off. There was a period where Vanderbilt was actually like a decent bubble team. I didn't realize, I know they're a meme for college football. They're always terrible. But college basketball, they had Darius Garland. They had a few other 5-star big men. And yeah, they're facing Florida in the last game of the season. Florida's been really good. I'm guessing they're going to get crushed in that game. They did beat Arkansas. They had an early season win against... who was that? UNC Greensboro? UNC Greensboro must be good if they got a game score of 82 for winning that game only by 4 points. But either way, Vanderbilt basketball is terrible. Georgetown, another just horrible Big East team. They play a terrible arena situation, former blue blood, and they've just gotten crushed in these games. They did start off the year with a game score of a 97. So it's just gone completely downhill since their start. They remind me of another team I'm going to be talking about. Here is Missouri, by the way, 0-17 in the SEC. The SEC's been beating up on Vanderbilt and Missouri really badly, but Missouri is another team. Looks like they scheduled a bunch of easy games to start the year, and they had a decent record. They did beat Wichita State. They beat Pittsburgh. They had a bunch of quad 4 wins as well, and then they just got throttled in SEC play. How about Michigan? This is Michigan's worst season since at least 2008, and they've got to fire Juwan Howard, you would think. 8-22, 3-16, but they started off the year with game scores of 96, 99, and 99. and they're still outside of the top 100. Imagine if they didn't have that start. They would be outside of the top 150. But recently, it's gotten so bad for them. I mean, I guess technically they don't have any terrible game scores outside of, I mean, the game against Rutgers, my God. But yeah, they've just had a horrible, horrible year. Michigan has. Indiana is another team. I mean, technically they have a winning record, but I'm surprised they're bringing back Mike Woodson. I mean, listen, I understand, you know, he just got hired, but you got to swallow your pride sometimes and say, let's not waste any more years by being bullheaded and giving this dude more time. It's just not going to work out. I don't think it's going to work out. They have won 3 straight games, and they've been pretty impressive, to be honest. Maybe that's why they're retaining him. And they do have a game against Michigan State at home. I guess that is winnable for them as well. So maybe Indiana basketball is turning it around. Notre Dame's another team that started off horribly, but they have kind of turned it around recently. They are a very bipolar team. So they are a top 30 team on defense, but they are a bottom, like 269th best offensive rating. But who is the boringest team in college basketball? It has to be Rutgers University. So not only are they completely average at 15-15, but they have the 4th best defensive efficiency in college basketball and the 283rd best offensive efficiency. Basically what that means is they're involved in a ton of low-scoring games, and their adjusted tempo at 162 really isn't going to help them in terms of having higher scoring matchups. But either way, guys, those are just some of the worst college basketball teams of 2024. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.